All right, so a few of you have been asking about where students find your feedback, and a lot of you have seen the problem between grades and user progress. So I want to take a second, now that you guys all know way more than you ever wanted to know about Brightspace, why we landed on trying to train students to use user progress instead of grades, and hopefully peel back the curtain a little bit. So let me just tell you a little bit about our struggle. For many, many months, we decided that we were going to use grades. Grades were the easiest place for students to find feedback. We were going to have teachers grade in a way that all feedback went to grades. And that was our decision. And we tried to stick with that for quite a while. And then I'll just tell you, Brad Barson sent me a Google Hangout message one day while I was on vacation, and he was absolutely frustrated. It is so hard to understand when your feedback is going, where your feedback is going where and when, and grades and all this other stuff. And so after we had made this decision to just send everybody to grades, we kept running into problems. Different places that teachers couldn't grade. They couldn't leave feedback. Things that slowed teachers' grading process down in a system that was already taking teachers too long to grade. And so we collaborated with a lot of other entities. We were working with designers, we were working with other people on our team, instructor managers, and even the instructors that had been piloting in iLearn 3. And we ended up changing everything at the last second to send everybody to user progress. And so long story short, we landed on user progress. The question we get from you guys is, can you send all of your students to grades instead of user progress? And the answer is yes, if you want to. But if you choose to do so, let me show you what you can't do in the system. So I made a little diagram on the whiteboard here to try to explain this. Let's go over here. And so this is the system right here. So this is the diagram that we landed on. And to explain this a little bit better, these are places that you cannot grade or leave feedback. If you do in these places, students do not get the feedback that they want. So if you want to send all your students to grades, you can absolutely do that. But these are all the things you can't do in grading. But if you would rather send your students to user progress, this is the only thing you can't do. So let's kind of break this down for a second. We landed on user progress because a teacher could grade any way they want. The only thing they couldn't do was use the gradebook overall feedback. And this is the feature that lets you take and send all of your, put in one sentence or one statement, and it automatically gets delivered to all students. That only goes to grades. But what we have found is that most teachers remedy that by using announcements, or even using text expanders. So let's go over to this side. So once again, to recap, if you want to send all your students to user progress, you can grade however you want. You probably just don't want to use this one feature. However, if you want to use grades, you can do that. Send your students only to grades. But if you do this, these are things you can't do. You can't grade quizzes in the quiz tool and leave feedback under attempt feedback. Okay, you can't leave feedback under question feedback. And grading by questions is actually one of the fastest ways to grade quizzes. So we chose to not use this because that was a feature that we wanted teachers to be able to use. There's a place in completion summary where it says just feedback. There's overall feedback, which does go to grades, and then there's this feedback box, which does not. So all these places do not go to grades, so you can't use these. Automatic question feedback. Okay, so this is anytime the quiz has automatic feedback built in by the designer. If anytime a student checks B and B is the wrong answer or the right answer, whatever it is, the designer can put in feedback that automatically goes because of the question that was selected. All right, so then let's go to assignments. On assignments, students can see their score in grades, but they can't see rubric criteria. So if you are grading on a rubric and you wanted students to be able to see all the different features that you chose on your rubric, they won't be able to see that. They can't see any feedback attachments. So anytime you do, if you're doing a Word document and you did track changes and you give that back to students with their changes, they don't see that in grades. They have to go to user progress. Anytime you use the assignment grader app, now that's that mobile app for iPad or Android, that is only visible in user progress. So you have to go to user progress. You can't send your students to grades and expect that they'll see that. So there's some really cool features in that iPad grader. It lets you annotate right over the students' documents. It lets you give video feedback, audio feedback. None of those things work. None of those things will the students be able to see in grades. And then the last thing was kind of the same with discussions, was the same thing as assignments. It's that rubric criteria. So students won't be able to see that rubric criteria. So there you have it. Those are, if you want to make that choice to send students only to grades, that's fine. But those are all the things you can't do. And I'll actually include a link to a Screen Steps article that explains every place you can possibly grade and all the places where that feedback goes so that you can understand that a little bit better. Now, what you basically have to understand, we hope that you understand, is that we made the choice based off of teacher experience. We wanted teachers to be able to use the tool that way it was meant to be used. When we made that choice, we knew that we were sacrificing student experience. And that was a sacrifice that we had to make because of all those tools that a teacher could no longer use. The student experience that's sacrificed is now when they go to user progress, they have to go to user progress grades, they got to go to user progress assignments, user progress quizzes, and sometimes even user progress discussions. So there's still, within user progress, 3 or so places that they need to go to find their feedback. But the important thing is that you as a teacher know where your feedback is going, no matter what you're doing, and give students the documents out of Screen Steps that they need so that they can find your feedback. So that is the long story long. Anyway, we hope you guys are doing great in iLearn 3. We appreciate your sacrifice, your hard work to understand the system. We know it's not perfect, but hopefully now you understand a little bit more why we made the choices that we made, and now you have the information to make the choices that you need to make.